Three retired couples sit in a financial planner's office. All three have about $800,000 saved. All three want to spend roughly the same amount per year. The planner shows them the standard chart. Wait until 70, maximize your benefit, live longer, get more money. Simple math. Couple 1 nods along. Sounds smart. They'll wait. Couple 2 asks one question. What if we don't make it to 85? Couple 3 asks a different question. What are we supposed to live on while we wait 8 years? Fast forward a decade. Couple 1 worked until 69 because they had to fund the gap. They claimed at 70, got their big checks, then one of them died at 74. The survivor now gets one benefit. They left about $200,000 in unclaimed benefits on the table and spent their healthiest years working. Couple 2 claimed at 62, used those checks to take pressure off their portfolio during a rocky market in years 1 through 3. Their account balance today is actually higher than couple 1's. They spent their mid-60s hiking New Zealand and visiting grandkids. Couple 3 also claimed at 62, but for a different reason. The husband's benefit was twice his wife's. She claimed early to create cash flow. He waited until 70. When he died at 81, she inherited his massive survivor benefit and has been living comfortably for 9 years on a check that's 30% bigger than what she would have gotten if they'd both waited. So here's the question. Why does every financial talking head tell you to delay Social Security until 70 when 61% of Americans file before full retirement age and only 10% actually make it to 70? Are millions of people just bad at math, or is the conventional wisdom built on assumptions that collapse the moment you stress test them against reality? Here's what I'm going to show you. The advice to wait until 70 isn't wrong exactly. It's just incomplete. It's optimized for one scenario, living into your mid-90s, and it completely ignores portfolio mechanics, sequence risk, tax optimization, behavioral psychology, and the fact that $20,000 at 62 buys you something fundamentally different than $20,000 at 92. Once you understand how all these systems interact, claiming at 62 stops looking like a panic move and starts looking like a lever you can pull on purpose. Let me start with a central idea that changes everything. Social Security is not a retirement account. It's not a pile of money with your name on it that grows if you leave it alone. It's an insurance product. Specifically, it's longevity insurance. You're paying premiums your whole working life, and the benefit is protection against outliving your money. Once you see it that way, the entire framing shifts. The question stops being, how do I maximize the total dollars I extract from the government, which is how most people think about it, and becomes, what's the right time to activate my longevity coverage given everything else I know about my health, my money, and how I actually want to live. Think about it like this. You buy fire insurance on your house. You pay premiums every year. If your house burns down, the policy pays out. If it doesn't, you don't get your premiums back. You don't call your insurance agent at age 70 and say, hey, I didn't have a fire, can I get a refund? That's not how insurance works. The value isn't in getting your money back. It's in the protection. Social Security works the same way. The value isn't just in collecting the biggest possible check. It's in having reliable income when you need it. And here's the twist. Delaying to 70 is optimizing for one specific risk, living to 95. But it completely ignores the opposite risk, dying at 73 and leaving $250,000 in benefits unclaimed that could have funded the best years of your life. Now, you might be thinking, okay, fine, but the math still says wait, right? Bigger checks, more total money. Here's where it gets interesting. The math only says that if you use the assumptions financial planners love, and those assumptions are quietly insane. The standard break-even analysis assumes a 0% discount rate. In English, that means they're telling you a dollar you get today is worth exactly the same as a dollar you get in 30 years. That's not how money works. That's not how time works. That's not how anything works. Let's fix that. If you claim at 62, you start getting checks immediately. If you wait until 70, you get bigger checks, but you've skipped 8 years of payments. The break-even point is when the total dollars from the delayed bigger checks finally catch up to the total dollars from the earlier smaller checks. Under the standard zero discount rate assumptions, That's usually somewhere around age 80 to 82. But now add reality. Let's say you can earn even a modest 4% return on the money you receive early. Maybe you invest it. Maybe you use it to avoid pulling from your portfolio, which stays invested. Suddenly, break even doesn't happen until 87. Bump that to 5%, now you're looking at 89 or 90. At 6%, you might not break even until your mid-90s. Here's the kicker. The average American man who makes it to 65 lives to about 83. The average woman lives to 86. Those are averages. 50% of people don't make it that far. So when you delay to 70 under the assumption that you're maximizing lifetime benefits, you're literally betting your retirement strategy on being in the top half of the longevity distribution and living past the break-even point. And if you lose that bet, if you make it to 75 and that's it, you've just spent your healthiest, most active years working or draining your portfolio, and the big checks you waited for paid out for a grand total of 5 years. That's not optimization. That's a gamble that didn't pay off. But let's say you're feeling lucky. You've got good genes, you take care of yourself, fine. Even if you do make it to 92, there's still a question nobody asks. When do those dollars actually matter most? There's this concept called healthspan versus lifespan. Lifespan is how long you live. Healthspan is how long you're healthy enough to actually enjoy living. Author Bill Perkins wrote a whole book about this. You've got go-go years, your 60s and maybe early 70s, when you're healthy, energetic, and you can do the stuff you always wanted to do. Then you've got slow-go years, mid-70s to early 80s, when you're still functional but slowing down. Then you've got no-go years, late 80s onward, when you're mostly managing health problems and just trying to stay comfortable. Here's the uncomfortable truth. $30,000 at 63 can buy you a month in Italy with your spouse while you can still walk the hills and stay out late and eat too much pasta. $30,000 at 87 buys you a home health aide and some nicer meals at the assisted living facility. Both are valuable, but they're not the same value. Delaying Social Security to maximize your checks assumes that $1 at 90 is just as good as $1 at 65. But your lived experience knows better. The trips you don't take in your 60s don't get made up with bigger checks in your 80s. The time with your grandkids when they're young and you're healthy doesn't come back. The delayed gratification makes sense if you're building wealth, but you're not building wealth anymore. You're spending it down. And the whole point of spending it down is to convert money into life. The conversion rate is way better when you're younger. Now, here's where people start getting uncomfortable, and I get it. This sounds like I'm telling you to blow your money early and hope you die on time. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the decision isn't just about maximizing dollars. It's about managing two risks, not one. The risk of living too long, yes, but also the risk of dying too soon. And most financial advice is completely obsessed with the first risk and pretends the second one doesn't exist. There's another layer to this that nobody talks about. When you delay Social Security, you don't just sit around doing nothing for 8 years. You still need to eat, you still need to live. That money has to come from somewhere. For most people, it comes from their portfolio. And that creates a problem that's way bigger than the break-even chart suggests. It's called sequence of returns risk. And it's the silent killer of retirement plans. Here's how it works. Let's say you've got $1 million invested and you want to spend $90,000 a year in retirement. You claim at 62, Social Security covers $30,000. So you pull $60,000 from your portfolio. But if you wait until 70, you're pulling the full $90,000 from your investments every year for 8 years. That's an extra $240,000 that gets yanked out of your portfolio instead of staying invested. Now, here's the problem. If the market tanks in year 2 of your retirement, which it did for a lot of people who retired in 2000 or 2008 or even 2022, and you're pulling $90,000 a year, you're selling stocks while they're down to fund your life. Those sales lock in your losses. You're pulling out shares that will never recover because they're gone. You sold them at the bottom. This is sequence risk. The order of your returns matters a lot more than the average return. If you get a bad market early in retirement while you're taking big withdrawals, it's way more damaging than a bad market later when your portfolio has had time to adjust and you're pulling less. Claiming Social Security early creates a buffer. It's bridge income that takes pressure off your portfolio during the most vulnerable years. You're pulling 60,000 instead of 90,000. If the market drops 30%, you're selling fewer shares at depressed prices. That gives your portfolio more time to recover. Multiple academic studies show that reducing early withdrawals, even slightly, can add years to your portfolio's lifespan, sometimes more years than the extra Social Security checks would have added. So the irony is this: you delay Social Security to get bigger checks so you're more secure later. But in doing so, you hammer your portfolio early, increase sequence risk, and potentially make yourself less secure overall. You optimize the wrong variable. And here's the psychological piece that's even weirder. Even when the math says you're fine, most retirees don't spend their money. They just don't. They sit on it. They agonize over withdrawals. They die with most of their portfolio intact and pass it on to kids who didn't need it. There's this fascinating study from the Retirement Income Institute in 2025. They tracked how retirees actually spend money from different sources. Guaranteed income, stuff like Social Security, pensions, annuities, people spend about 80% of it. They feel comfortable using it because it's steady and it keeps coming. Portfolio withdrawals, people spend about 50% of what they could sustainably pull. Same household, same financial security. But the source of the income changes how it feels to spend it. This is pure psychology. Watching your account balance drop, even when it's part of the plan, even when the plan is bulletproof, feels bad. It feels like you're spending your foundation. Guaranteed income doesn't shrink your balance. It just shows up. So people use it, they go to dinner, they take trips, they say yes to experiences. If claiming Social Security at 62 creates a reliable income floor that you actually feel comfortable spending, while your portfolio sits in the background growing and compounding, that's a different kind of return. It's not on a spreadsheet, but it's real. It's the return of actually living the retirement you save for instead of hoarding it out of fear. I've seen this firsthand running my business for over a decade. I work with people who have money, real money, and they still agonize over spending $80 on a nice dinner. The numbers say they're fine. The spreadsheet says spend, but the feeling says hold on tight. Claiming Social Security early doesn't just change the cash flow, it changes the permission structure. It makes spending feel safe. Now, everything I've just said assumes you're single, but most people aren't. And for couples, Social Security isn't two separate decisions. It's one coordinated strategy. Because here's the rule that changes everything. When one spouse dies, the survivor keeps the higher benefit. The smaller one disappears. Poof, gone. That means if you're married, you're not optimizing two individual statements. You're building a system that has to work across two lifetimes and then support one person, probably for a long time, after the first person dies. This completely changes the math. The smart play for most couples is this. The lower earner claims early. Around 62, that turns on cash flow immediately, takes pressure off the portfolio, funds a lifestyle. Meanwhile, the higher earner delays until 70. That benefit grows at roughly 8% per year. It maxes out. And critically, it becomes the survivor benefit. Here's why that matters. Let's say the husband earned more during his career. His Social Security at 70 is $3,000 a month. His wife's maxed benefit at 70 would have been $1,800. If they both wait until 70 and the husband dies at 75, the wife loses her $1,800 check and keeps his $3,000. She's now living on $3,000 a month, not $4,800, for potentially decades. But if the wife claimed at 62 and the husband waited until 70, she's been getting her reduced benefit, maybe around $1,300 a month, for 8 years. That's over $120,000 that either funded their lifestyle or stayed invested in the portfolio. Then when the husband dies, she still steps up to his $3,000 survivor benefit. She got 8 years of income and ended up in the exact same place. For couples, claiming at 62 isn't about being impatient. It's about using one person's benefit as a strategic cash flow tool while maximizing the survivor benefit that's going to matter most in the long run. And if you're doing this right, those early checks also create space for Roth conversions and tax planning before required minimum distributions kick in, and both Social Security benefits stack up and push you into higher brackets. Now, let me give you a real scenario. I'm not going to name names, but this is based on an actual client situation with details changed for privacy. Couple in their early 60s, he worked corporate, she had a small business. Combined portfolio, about $1.2 million. They want to spend $100,000 a year. His Social Security at 70 would be $3,800 a month. Hers would be $1,900. Standard advice says wait, max out those checks. They run the numbers with their planner. If they both wait until 70 and pull $100,000 a year from the portfolio to bridge the gap, they're yanking out $800,000 over 8 years. If the market has even one bad stretch in there, sequence risk is brutal. The Monte Carlo simulation shows a 72% chance their money lasts to 95. Now they run a different scenario. She claims at 62, brings in about $1,400 a month, reduces portfolio withdrawals immediately. He waits until 70. His benefit maxes out at $3,800. When he hits 70, they're pulling under $50,000 a year from the portfolio instead of $100,000. The new Monte Carlo, 87% chance their money lasts to 95. Better odds, same spending. And they spent their 60s traveling and doing the stuff they wanted instead of white-knuckling through portfolio withdrawals. 5 years later, he passes away unexpectedly at 75, sudden heart attack. She's devastated, obviously, but financially, she's okay. She steps up to his $3,800 survivor benefit. The portfolio barely got touched during the gap years because her early claim funded life. She's got more than enough to live on. If they'd both delayed, they'd have spent 5 years draining the portfolio and stressing about market swings, and he'd have collected his big checks for a grand total of 5 years. That's it. Here's what the break-even charts don't show you. Life is a single-player game. You don't get to diversify across multiple lifetimes and average it out. You get one outcome. And optimizing for the scenario where everything goes perfectly, you live to 97 and markets cooperate and you never have a health scare, that's not planning. That's hoping. Okay, 2 quick cutaways because this is getting heavy. First cutaway. Imagine a financial advisor in his office. Suspenders, big mahogany desk. He's explaining Social Security claiming strategies. Client says, so you're telling me if I wait 8 years, I get a bigger check? Advisor nods proudly. Client says, what if I die in year 3? Advisor shuffles papers. Well, you'll have optimized your benefit. Client stares at him. For 3 years. Advisor clears throat. It's about the principle. Second cutaway. Picture the Social Security Administration as a game show host. Contestant walks up. Host says, congratulations, you've unlocked your retirement benefit. You can take the smaller prize now or wait 8 years for the bigger one. Contestant says, what's behind door 3? Host says, there is no door 3. You just decide when you want the money. Contestant says, but what if I? Host cuts him off. There's no time limit on this decision, except death. Contestant sweats. Can I call a friend? Host shrugs. Sure, but they're all just guessing too. All right, back to reality. Everything I've just walked through, portfolio protection, psychology, couples optimization, that all assumes you have flexibility, that you're choosing between good options, but not everyone does. And this is important. If waiting until 70 means you go into debt, drain your emergency fund, skip medical care, or make financially destructive decisions just to survive, then claiming early isn't a mistake. It's a survival move, and it's exactly what the system was designed for. Social Security is a safety net. If you need it at 62 to keep the lights on, take it. Don't let some blogger with a Monte Carlo simulator shame you into financial ruin while you wait for a bigger check later. There's no virtue in optimizing yourself into poverty. And here's something most people don't know. Claiming early isn't always permanent. If you claim at 62 and your situation improves later, maybe you inherit money, maybe you go back to work, you can suspend your benefit once you reach full retirement age. While it's suspended, it starts earning delayed retirement credits again, roughly 8% a year until 70. That means Social Security can be a flexible tool. You can turn it on when you need it and adjust later if things change. It's not a one-time irreversible choice. So let's bring this all together. The conventional wisdom says delay Social Security as long as possible because bigger checks equal more money. And on a spreadsheet, in a vacuum, If you live to 97, that's true. But real life isn't a spreadsheet. Real life has sequence risk and health spans, and behavioral psychology and the fact that you might die at 74. Real life is two people coordinating benefits and trying to protect a survivor. Real life is the difference between spending your 60s hiking and your 80s in a chair. The advice to delay isn't wrong for everyone. It's wrong as a blanket rule, because 62 can be a deliberate strategic lever. It can protect your portfolio in fragile early years. It can create reliable income that you actually feel comfortable spending. It can set up a survivor benefit while funding life right now. And sometimes, it's just the bridge you need to avoid financial disaster while you wait for other pieces to fall into place. There's no universal right age. There's only the age that fits your health, your money, your goals, and the retirement you actually want to live, instead of the one that maximizes theoretical dollars on a break-even chart you might not live long enough to see. Here are 3 specific takeaways. First, run your own break-even analysis with a realistic discount rate, at least 4%, and look at what age you'd actually need to reach for delaying to pay off. If that number is past your family's typical longevity or past your risk tolerance, claiming earlier starts looking smarter. Second, if you're married, stop thinking about 2 Social Security decisions and start thinking about one coordinated system. Lower earner claims early to fund life and reduce portfolio strain. Higher earner delays to maximize the survivor benefit. Run the math on your specific situation, but that's the general framework that works for most couples. Third, look at your actual spending psychology. If you're the type who's going to agonize over every portfolio withdrawal and underspend even when the plan says you're fine, then creating a guaranteed income floor with early Social Security might be the unlock that lets you enjoy the money you've saved. The math says one thing, but your behavior is what actually matters. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. That's true for Social Security too. The optimizers and the spreadsheet warriors are out here running simulations to squeeze out an extra 2%. Meanwhile, the people who claimed at 62 reduced their stress, protected their portfolios during bad markets, and spent their healthy years actually living, they're not checking their break-even age. They're checking their passport stamps. Your retirement isn't a math problem. It's a life. Optimize for the life.